You've reached the Signal Watch, movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hello and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host Ryan Steens, and with me today is
Simon Day. Hello again.
And this one has been a long time in coming. Simon's been trying to get me to watch this for years.
Always the bridesmaid,
right?
Never the bride.
This is Kingsman, and I don't remember what year it came out.
Kingsman: The Secret Service, to give it its full title, 2014. And, like Ryan was saying, I brought this round about the last 5 times I've come. And I've gone, do you watch this? We've gone, and then, pick something else. I'm like, we've got to watch this. And The Kingsman, the prequel, was supposed to be coming out Valentine's weekend. They've actually moved it to September, but it is coming out this year, so I guess this is a nice still a nice warm-up for that.
Yeah, we might have time to watch the sequel between now and then.
Yeah. I don't know, would you... Because the sequel... I feel like the sequel is the worst excesses of this one. Did you enjoy this one?
That's a good question.
Because I was trying to read your face. Yeah. And I was like, it could... I was like, Ryan's not doing that face, but it could go either way.
I think I was enjoying it in waves.
Yeah.
As I was going through it. I wouldn't say I disliked it. I'll put it that way. It never was I like... this is going to be a tough podcast. Let me start with kind of my framework for why I had not seen this.
Sure.
So the original comic this is based on
Mark Millar.
Mark Millar, yeah, and he's a complicated figure in the comic book world.
Yeah, Scottish, isn't he?
He is Scottish,
yeah.
And he's a protege of one of my favorite writers, other than like Alan Moore and a couple other ones, Grant Morrison, also another Scotsman.
Yeah.
And they had kind of a bad parting of ways years ago. Okay. And my issue with Millar, I have many issues with Millar, not the least of which is he seems to have bankrolled his entire world on, or he has made a great deal of money by taking something somebody else did.
Yeah.
Turning it up a couple notches and just handing it back to people, or taking what people had done previously and going, what if it was kind of the opposite of that and I made it really violent?
Yeah.
What if Batman were a bad guy and really, really violent?
Yeah.
And so...
Didn't he do a Superman? Red Son Superman?
He did. He had this early career stuff that he did. That was kind of early to mid-career for him, where he'd been at DC. And Red Son is about to appear as a movie. It's being released as an animated movie. And I think it's one of those things of... I think the concept is interesting. I don't know how actually interesting the comic book itself is when you read it.
Yeah.
But people have kind of gone bonkers for it over the years, and I'm like, it's just one more of what had been a string of what they called Elseworlds series that DC did, where it's like, what if Superman were in the Old West?
Yeah.
What if Superman were Chinese in 1400? I'm not even kidding. Like, there was stuff like that. So.
If you ran a barber shop in Detroit.
Well, they had one. John Cleese wrote one called Superman True Brit. What if Superman had landed in England?
Oh, wow.
So, and it's just kind of this endless sea of these things. And to me, it's just one of those. But I don't want to get too far off on Millar. But so Wanted
Wanted, I saw the movie.
So Wanted, the movie has absolutely nothing to do with the comic.
Yeah, good start.
They took maybe the first 5 pages of the comic and then completely deviated from there, because Wanted was essentially, as a comic, proposing what if Lex Luthor and the other DC villains had won the day at some point and made everybody forget about the superheroes.
Okay.
And so that's what that secret cabal was that they kind of had in Wanted that he was a part of. Was the Angelina Jolie character was based on Catwoman in the comic.
Okay.
And he had this really horrible thing where he would work. To me, it was horrible. I did not like it. Where he would say, what I really want to do is be writing movies. So let's draw real actors' faces onto these characters. And so in Wanted, the character looked like Eminem. He had this whole thing of he wanted Eminem to be an actor, and he wanted him to star in that. So this is kind of my context of like having this huge distaste for Millar.
Didn't he have something to do with Captain America? Was it Winter Soldier or Civil War? Civil War, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Civil War. That was probably my favorite thing he's done.
Yeah.
And I still don't love Civil War. Like, I think he had a really good premise.
Yeah. But
I think the execution of it is less than amazing.
Yeah, because I'm obviously not a comic nerd like you, but the only thing.
Nerd.
But no, nothing wrong with it. But I'm just like, but the only thing I really know him from, because I guess I learned backwards from the movies backwards, was Kick-Ass, I guess.
Yeah, and Kick-Ass is something that...
Which did kind of come out before. It seemed to be the first one of all those, what if a normal person tried doing this?
Yeah, and it was also kind of a thing that had been done in the comics, and the in his comic, the thing I took umbrage with was... And I'm not like looking to pick on Millar. It just is. I read enough of his stuff. I've stopped reading it. Kick-Ass became very much a comic book story, just a regular plain old one. Even though it started with this premise of what if an average person, and then by the end you're like, there's no difference between this and every other comic book story. So I don't really know what I'm reading. So anyway, that was the context. Plus, I was kind of like, I feel like I've seen enough things that are, we all grew up on James Bond, and now here's our spin on it.
Yeah.
And so it was hard to get excited about it in any way, shape, or form. I felt like I got what I was going to want to know about it out of the trailer.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't know if that really changed by the end of the movie. There were no like real surprises, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it was a good ride. I wouldn't say don't watch this movie. That's certainly not where I'd start.
No.
I think it had a couple of issues. I thought the villain's plot made absolutely no sense whatsoever.
It seemed to be like a Hugo Drax Stromberg plot, whereas he's a very, very crazy environmentalist, basically.
Which I think is actually fascinating, right? And he basically...
Because really his plans, like, kind of make sense for the world. For the Earth, it's a good plan, but just for mankind, it's a terrible plan.
In many, many ways. And thinking that people would buy into it. So I think there he was riffing on... There's a character named Ra's al Ghul in Batman comics who you would have seen in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
In the comics, Ra's al Ghul, that's his whole thing. He's basically trying to... He keeps thinking maybe he should wipe the face of the earth, of humanity, and bring man back to more of a natural state, sort of thing.
Okay.
And so that's why Batman's always fighting. I mean, you can't kill everybody. That's not how we're going to solve the world's problems.
Yeah.
That's been less so since like the 70s and 80s. But
even in the movie, he wanted to, destroy Gotham or something, I think.
Right. But that was how kind of they twisted it there. So the reason I say the villain's plot, so the villain in this movie is...
Well, he always seems to be a bit Steve Jobs as well. It's like, he was like this nerd industrialist who was like,
Honestly, Samuel L. Jackson was great, but he was about 40 years too old for what they were trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was just having fun playing outside of his normal kind of box a little bit.
Right, and I appreciate that, but I'm also like, you are 40 years too old for what they're trying to do here.
But also 40 years too old to have that girlfriend Who
Was that his girlfriend?
I think you missed it, but like towards the end, he kind of passed her on the ass, and
Oh, I did.
and I thought they had
I went to go get cheese at some point.
Yeah.
I think I missed the
cheese to go with your cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they kind of had a Max Zorin Mayday type relationship there.
Okay.
Really. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up on that there was any romantic
Karate
relationship.
instructor with benefits, basically.
Right.
But you're not a fan of Matthew Vaughn either.
I don't really think about Matthew Vaughn one way or another.
Yeah, because I think I've mentioned Kick-Ass to you before, the movie, and you were like,
Well, I just don't think I don't really because I actually thought the movie, if wanted, was entertaining.
Yeah,
It's not necessarily my cup of tea up and down.
well, that was Matthew Vaughn.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that
that was him like rewriting Millar.
Yeah.
And so I actually like that version of Wanted more than I like the comic.
Yeah, but Matthew Vaughn, the director, I mean.
Yeah.
Like, he did Kick-Ass.
And he did Wanted.
No, he didn't do Wanted. He didn't direct Wanted.
I thought he did.
No, it was the guy who did that Night Watch and Day Watch. The Russian guy.
I thought it was.
Because our connection with what we're doing today is Matthew Vaughn did Layer Cake. Because he started off as a prodigy for Guy Ritchie. Mm-hmm. He was under Guy Ritchie.
Okay.
And then his first film by himself was Layer Cake, which of course pushed Daniel Craig into Bond, kind of, in people's consciousness. And then he did X-Men First Class.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I like X-Men First Class.
Well, it's like a 60s Bond film, really.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it.
Because I remember watching that and saying to my brother, actually, they should give this guy a Bond film. And then, funnily enough, he did, Kingsman. And then he did Kick-Ass, and then he did Kingsman. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I don't think of Matthew Vaughn with any negative connotation.
Yeah. I felt watching it this time.
It's always hard to watch a movie with someone who's not giving you anything when you're watching. Sorry about that.
Well, no, it was interesting for me because I loved this when it came out.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and it was a nice refreshment after the Daniel Craig's Dow Bonds,
right?
Because this came out the same year that 2015. This came out the same year as Mission Impossible 5, Spectre, and Man from U.N.C.L.E. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty packed film, spy film year. And I feel like this one was, possibly the best, or at least the most entertaining out of all those. Just because it didn't take itself too seriously.
I mean, that's its mission statement.
Yeah.
I mean, they say in the movie, spy movies are taking themselves too seriously now.
Yeah.
There needs to be an antidote and get back to fun, which is a weird thing to say out loud in a movie.
Yeah. Well, Samuel Jackson, Colin Firth were saying, if this was a film, you'd be saying this now, and you'd be saying this, and the villain would do this.
Yeah. It
Just
bordered on fourth wall breaking,
Yeah.
and felt very strange in the context of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I like
to the point where you wondered kind of why they weren't just shooting each other at that point. Like, if there was any reality to it. And that's when you're like, there's no reality. And when by the time you get to the third act, you're like, okay, we've abandoned any pretense of...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like at the start as well, it tries to set itself apart from the Bonds by saying, we're going to see what would happen if you had a working class person brought into this.
Which is also Casino Royale.
Yeah. Although, Bond went to...
Right.
Oxford or whatever, and then by the end of it, they're just like, screw it, just do a Bond film, or Roger Moore Bond film, I should say, to differentiate. I mean, this did very, very well. Obviously, it launched a franchise. It did get a lot of criticism though, for two things: for the church scene, and for the kind of anal sex joke at the end. Which they both kind of said. I think with that it was a bit like, well, we've been teetering on 12-year-old boy smutty humour, and then we've fallen off right at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think with the church scene, it was just like, this is very violent. Even though these people kind of deserve it, they don't really deserve death.
It was interesting to see, and it often is interesting as people from overseas, kind of look at the U.S. and the U.S. You always have a hard time looking at yourself, right? It's other people also often know you better than you know yourself from certain angles, and when you're, I was frankly completely jaw dropped during that scene.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember when I first saw it theatrically, and it was just silence in the theatre. And I think people even clapped afterwards.
Yeah.
They're just like, what was that? Oh my God, yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things of we consider kind of, a lot of people consider that brand of evangelical kind of the crazy uncle that we've all got. Yeah. But you still got to love your uncle, right?
Yeah.
And whether you talk to them or not, you don't want other people talking badly about your uncle. And we don't often, as much as the U.S. kind of looks, Americans anyway, can look at other cultures and say, oh, they have this crazy religious fervor that's leading them to do bad things. We have a really hard time turning that back on ourselves, right? Yeah. Even though a lot of us don't. We kind of recognize it for what it is and understand how toxic it can be. But it's a really hard conversation to have in the U.S. because it's such a continuum of what, when have you crossed over to be, and this is, of course, I would say cartoonish, but it's not actually that cartoonish. Yeah. When with some churches out there, as
which is
not
scary.
Too hard to find. Yeah.
Because it was all based on hate. Which, should you have that in a church? Not really. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far into what you should and shouldn't be doing in church. It seems that can be a different podcast someday. But it was shocking to see someone, because normally an American film company would not let that go.
Well, this is interesting. So that's a very good point, because Matthew Vaughn is famous for kind of privately funding his film and then selling it to a studio on the proviso that he makes it his way. So if this had been funded completely, so Marv's his production company, which you'll see Marv pop up at the front of stuff, and it pops up at the front of, I think, Rocket Man and stuff that he doesn't direct, he produces. But of course, if this was totally funded by 20th Century Fox, that would have gone. That wouldn't have been in there, I think, pretty clearly. And maybe both those two scenes, the one at the end with the girl as well, maybe, would have been toned down, who knows. Although I kind of like that, because that is basically like Roger Moore, but just saying exactly, with no pretense. It's not like laying there with champagne going, another 3 days to Cairo, darling, or whatever. It's like, we're just going to have sex. So, it's very on the nose.
It was a little bit surprising to actually see that pop up in a movie. Had they set it up earlier in the movie with that kind of joke, I think it was just like you're like at the very, very tail end of the movie. And
well, doesn't also Mark Miller have an obsession with asses? I read somewhere.
I mean, maybe.
Or anal sex or something, I don't know. Somebody told me that.
Now that you say it, it kind of rings a bell, but it's been a while since I've read any of his stuff. But I mean, I thought it was kind of funny, but I also am like, so we watched about half of it. And
you probably wouldn't watch it with your parents, because that would totally throw you.
Well, almost everything that we're talking about happened. Jamie watched about half the movie, and then she went to go do other things, and she's like, can you leave the DVD? I want to finish watching this later. And I'm like,
just don't tell her.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell her. I'm very curious to see what she says when she watches the back half of this movie.
Back off. Can't get away from the innuendos now. Can't pull out of, we're like in a dive. Can't pull out of the innuendos.
But I did kind of like, I kind of wish it had been more like it was in the third act all the way through.
Yeah. Which bit? The bit where Colin Firth Shocker got killed? Spoiler.
Well, just it got so crazy at the end. And I enjoyed it.
Cool in the gang when he was trying to.
Well, okay, I'll tell you one of the scenes in the movie. I was kind of like, it just didn't seem that well thought out and seemed really rote. There's a lot of the movie that's training, right?
Yeah. First 2/3, really.
Right, which I thought was also some very odd pacing for the movie, but I think it doesn't not work.
Yeah.
It does work. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to make it a double negative. It does work.
Well, it's also weird Colin Firth gets on this case and then gets knocked out for 10 minutes. And it's almost like we haven't got anything for him to do. Put him in a coma for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Which the second film, the sequel, does the same thing. It's kind of weird.
To me, I was wondering if they wrote a lot of things backward.
Yeah.
Like they'd gotten to a point and they're like, okay, well, we need to have him have this little fall from grace and not get into the Kingsman, and so we've got to open up a slot, or
it shows his humanity, and to be honest, he's kind of finished then. If it wasn't for the fact that Michael Caine's a traitor, he wouldn't be a Kingsman. That would be the end of it. But then he's the only one that can kind of come back.
But anyway, anyway, you get into this training sequence, and they have this really long helio jump, or whatever you call it, halo jump, when you do a
very
skydiving.
Moonraker reminiscent, I think.
But it was also like, their solution didn't make any sense.
Well, when they're doing the Iron Man 3 monkeys thing, where it's like, I'll hold on to you because one of us has to have a parachute.
Either you, in that scenario, mathematically, you double up immediately.
Well, they tried that, but then that one guy went off by himself. He pulled his chute straight away.
Yeah, but then you go, okay, you two go over there, and then we three, we're gonna figure it out by math. I mean,
I thought they were doing they kind of were doing that, but they did it in a circle. So it's like,
I thought they were just going like, I'm peeling off one by one, and we'll just figure it out until we get to the last two, which takes too long.
I think it was the last one on the line. You pull, if a chute comes out, you go with the next person, or the next person hang on to you.
I will just put it this way. Whatever the math is, which it would not have been how I would have solved that problem, which is neither here nor there. Compared to how crazy the ending was, it felt more grounded in a different spy movie. Yeah. It felt like two different spy movies to me.
Yeah.
Because they were very concerned with where you landing, and it felt more like a more realistic spy movie.
Well, I think tonally as well, the end. On the one hand, you've got people fighting very violently in different locations and killing each other, probably. And you've got you can see guys like grabbing women, strangling women and stuff, and God knows what. And then it comes back to Samuel Jackson playing Cool in the Gang.
Yeah.
And it's like, kill him the best, he killed all our friends and all this kind of stuff. And, and it just doesn't really gel too well together.
And when you actually watch what's happening, and you think at all about what this plan is, and the fact that in theory he got everyone to sign up for this, it makes absolutely.
Well, we don't know how many are in the cells, because we see her, that princess, but we don't know how many others are stuck down there.
Okay, so the world economy depends on us having X number of people in it. And all of he's getting all these billionaires and people to sign up, and it's like, well, the first thing that happens when you have a mass thing like that would happen is the economy falls apart.
Yeah.
All those people are going to suddenly, they might have they're going to have some kind of power.
Well, it's not about money though, is it? It's about you need people to do stuff. And they've got rid of all the people. So it doesn't matter how much money they've got.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is you don't just need people to do stuff, you need people to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And if you get rid of all those people buying gas, buying cell phones, buying, whatever, you suddenly have that whole economy crashes. So anyone who's, making billions of dollars is going to go,
yeah, it's a terrible plan.
Yeah, this is awful, which is going to impact. And if the idea is after this they're going to come through as saviors and help a whole bunch of people, those people are going to have about 10 minutes before they figured out what happened and go and murder all of those people.
Yeah. That's true.
Anyway, the villain's plan was what it was. Any more than having a sea base, that raises and lowers out of the water doesn't make any sense.
A moon set space station.
Yeah.
Well, it's when the heads exploded as well. I remember thinking at the time I saw it, it's a shame they can't show it realistically, but of course if they did show it realistically, it'd be absolutely disgusting. So they kind of have to do this cartoon version. Yeah. But again, I think that kind of pulls the rug away from any suspense or real threat, because it's like you just laugh at it.
Yeah.
And I feel like weirdly this time, I swear when I saw it theatrically, Obama's head blew up.
It did.
Oh, it did? I must have just missed it.
No, they showed.
I was sawing at cheese.
Yeah, no, they showed whatever that bunker is under the White House where they do all the planning stuff.
Because apparently the whole English royal family's gone. Which is kind of funny, because that kind of gives out mixed messages a little bit when this film came out.
Yeah.
It's like, do they deserve to go? Or are they just treacherous and would have done that? Yeah.
Again, it's always interesting talking to people from one side or the other. To Americans who are like, yeah, that seems like something royalty would do. So I don't think it was a mistake that they had like this Scandinavian royalty being the one who was like, no, yeah, I want to join you. It's like,
but I'm also sex mad. Yeah, it was. I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it this time watching it with you, but I don't know. I haven't watched it for a few years, and yeah, it didn't seem quite as good as I remembered. It seemed more clunky watching it with older eyes. And you know, maybe that's because I've had a few less Guinness than when I saw it theatrically. But I think you probably carried on the wave as well theatrically of the people around you. Whereas, I'm not saying you were sitting there hating it, but it just seemed. I guess I saw the flaws more this time. Yeah. Maybe things I was more forgiving about. But then I've done that with other films. You know, I've done that with Bond films before. You know, I've loved them in the theatre, and then when I've watched them at home, I've been like, oh dear, you know, that doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, we've all kind of got movies like that. I don't think it's that bad. It's I do think they kind of pulling the kid out of what looks to be like government housing or whatever, and you're pulling them out of that situation, and you know by the end of the movie that's going to resolve itself exactly the way it does.
Yeah. They're the new Lancelot and Galahad.
Yeah. Well, just even him going back to the pub that you've seen 2 or 3 times by this point, and you know he's going to take care of the evil stepdad. Is it just me, or is there a thing more in British movies about like the hot mom?
No, I think that's probably true. I mean, I was trying to work out that
she looked like she was young enough to date.
So watching it, I was like, how old is she supposed to be? Because I guess he was like about 4 when
Colin Firth. 1997, yeah.
When Colin Firth came round to his house, I guess he was about 4, and he's 17. Or 17 years later, so he must be about 21, 22. So she's gotta be 30. She's got to be 40.
42 or so, which maybe she could be, but
yeah, she's good. She's very good. Basically, she looks exactly the same with her hair a bit longer than the first scene. Yeah.
But it was kind of, they even like talking about how his mom was hot, and
well, it's funny for me because the stepdad always plays scumbags. You know, any like football hooligan film, he's in there. So I'm like, of course he's a stepdad. It's like just a scumbag. And Mark Strong, of course, again after we saw him in 19.
I thought Mark Strong was going to be the one to get it.
Yeah.
As just you're like, okay, you always have to have someone get it so the kids get motivated in the academy sort of.
Well, he was more like the Q though, wasn't he?
Well, that's how it turned out. Yeah. And just because he was there for the kids, he's whatever, and I thought it was going to be Galahad turning to him and going into Eggy and saying like we've got to do it for him, because I assumed Colin Firth is just going to just be in these movies.
Well, that was the shock. That was the shock of a little bit like, I guess, like Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi type thing of remove the mentor when he's not quite ready, the trainer's not quite ready. They spoiled it a little bit, so spoilers, I mean obviously everything we talk about is spoilers, we don't have to keep saying that, but it's like in the sequel they spoiled that a little bit, because very early on in the sequel advertising, so the sequel came out about 2 years later called Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and early on in the advertising there's a pair of glasses with one of the lenses broken, and I think it was the Mark Twain, or playing the Mark Twain quote of reports of my death have been exaggerated, and then of course, so going into the Golden Circle, you knew Colin Firth was going to be in that, and it does take about half the film for him to pop up, but he pops up and he's forgotten he's a Kingsman, and he's actually been looked after by the American Statesman, which is the American equivalent, and they have this device in the sequel, which is why I don't like Rise of Skywalker, which if you stick it on somebody's head early enough, if they've been shot, you can kind of regenerate whatever and bring them back. So he's alive, but he can't remember, and of course it takes to the last 20 minutes of the sequel for Colin Firth to really be back to remembering who he was and acting like who he was, which again is quite frustrating when you watch it, because he's the best part of the first film, so having him either not doing anything or doing it badly until the last 20 minutes of the sequel is a weird decision.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you more in case we watch it, but it's just I think the flaws in this are amplified in the sequel. I'm not saying the sequel doesn't have great moments, because I think it does. I think it has some fun stuff in there. But it'd be interesting kind of showing you that, because I think it's a bit like if this is Spy Who Loved Me, the sequel's Moonraker, kind of.
Oh my.
So, yeah. Whereas maybe they should have gone the other way and worked a bit more on Ticer script, and yeah.
I'm sure they were in a rush to get another one out there, but I liked the character of Eggy. You know, he was a little bit. I've talked
a little bit too
other
chavvy, a little bit too scummy, really. But
yeah, I mean, to some extent, he's a little bit of a
Burberry.
Oh my god! I have a lot of questions about working class British stuff sometimes when I'm watching movies. Of you guys think that looks good? But I mean, yeah.
What do you think of Michael Caine? Do you like?
So that was crazy. I'd forgotten he was supposed to be in this. I thought it was funny that you never see him stand up.
Yeah.
Clearly he's
it's in his contract.
I'm gonna do this sitting down.
I do love. I remember, kind of with friends at the time, just quoting his last line to each other of "you dirty little fucker," because it's suddenly he goes very working class, and it's so Arthur actually was always working class and had a chip on his shoulder.
I totally missed that. That's really good.
Yeah. So that was good. It's nice seeing him kind of play a villain, I guess. Because instantly you're like, well, Michael Caine's, if he's Arthur, we're in safe hands, and it's we're not really. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was a good little bit in the movie for sure. For him, it gave the character something to actually sort through. No one had to tell him. So I was about to make a comparison, and this is not just because they're British, but there's the concept of the fiction suit. I'll bring it from time to time, and it's basically you have a character who's your main character, but you leave them a little bit of a blank slate. Yeah. And the idea, and this is actually Grant Morrison, the comic book writer, is the guy who I read it from. And you basically are able to imagine yourself in their place, because as you're watching the movie, you don't have too much to read on. They're not that specific. And so you end up with Harry Potter as kind of a fiction suit. And Hermione is really well defined. Ron's really well defined. Harry just has these circumstances about.
Yeah. He's a blank slate kind of,
yeah. And so I think that actually works pretty well in this movie. He's working class, he's got this accent, but he doesn't really do anything reprehensible, outright. He doesn't express any real opinions other than I'm
well, I love the kind of exposition of he was a great gymnast until he was 11, and he could have been a fantastic Marine, but he dropped out. And it's okay, set up that exposition, get it all in place.
He's been sitting on his ass playing video games and smoking blunts,
stealing cars.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of, I guess, frivolous a little bit, but it's kind of fun, I think.
And I think that's okay, right? I mean, and that's kind of the like I said, the mission statement of the movie is spy movies are allowed. We shouldn't have to take them like serious dramas all the time.
Like Bourne or Bond or
yeah. I mean, by the time you get to the third Bourne movie, whether it was good or not, I mean those things were a slog, and then they decided to just keep cranking them out for a while.
But it's also the same plot with the Bournes, because it's kind of even because really the first one works because he's trying to find out who he is, and then after that it's well, yeah, but you didn't know this happened, or you didn't know there was another. There's another, like you said earlier, in the when we were doing Casino Royale, there was actually another agency behind the agency you thought did this, and and maybe they threatened your dog or shot your dog at the start of the film. It's okay. So so I feel like the Bonds, the Bournes and the Bonds, kind of do use pretty much the same plot over and over and over. And actually, the Bonds more than the Bournes, I think, at least try to twist it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Jason Bourne, I enjoyed, but I'm we're doing this again, are we? This is the fourth time.
God, when we showed up for the last one, that was a few years ago. I can't even remember it anymore. I just remember being We didn't really need to revisit this at all. I was good. I was good with the first 3 or whatever.
I think they're going to catch him, and then he does a little twist at the end and then walks off, and they play Moby again.
Yeah. Joan Allen looks into the distance.
Another Moby remix at the end.
I can I don't believe Matthew Vaughn has ever owned a dog.
No, because I thought maybe he did, because he seemed to have a lot of dog love in this, but...
I think if he understood what it means to own a dog, he might actually own a dog. I don't know. They're just, like, they introduce the dogs as kind of this concept, and then they just disappear until the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, you think you get maybe 3 shots of the dog after they go, okay, you're going to have to take care of the dog, and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't really build on it, other than kind of going, okay, people innately like dogs. Like that's a mean thing to do.
Well, it reminded me weirdly of the start Dog Soldiers, where the heroes... Do you remember the hero was on his training and he's running through the wood and they caught him? Mm-hmm. And then the bad guy, or the guy who's kind of training but turns out to be the bad guy as well, it's like, alright, you've done very well. Now shoot the dog for your final, challenge or whatever. And he's like, I'm not going to shoot the dog. And then, of course, he ends up fighting the guy and getting thrown out of the program. And I'm like, they've kind of just ripped that off again, as in, you have to show that you're willing to do anything, however terrible.
Yeah. Do
they really make you shoot dogs in the military?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like... So we used to talk when I was actually in screenwriting in college about, literally... Like, just, what does it take to evoke an emotional reaction in the audience? And we would just talk about...
Well, it's like...
I don't know. I don't think this is a common...
It's John Wick, isn't it?
Right. And we'd just be like, well, if you just kill a dog, people have a reaction. Yeah. And I was like, so you could just shoot a dog every 15 minutes in this, to evoke an emotional reaction. I was like, I don't... It's obviously audience manipulation or whatever, but... the fiction suit idea, you can put yourself in Eggy's seat and you go, well, I'd never pull that trigger. Like, you're not going to be the person who necessarily... I mean, you're going to have some psychopath sitting next to you who's like, I just do it, man. I just do it. I totally want to be a Kingsman and wear all those clothes.
Yeah.
But, 9 out of 10 people are going to be like, no. That's and so that's why they put it into movies. Well, and it's fine. I mean, it's a heightened reality, and it is what it is.
And so, exactly what you said. The first John Wick, they said, well, how do we get everybody on the side of this assassin straight away? And it's like, well, his wife died of cancer, but we never met her really, so we're not that bothered about that. But then she left him a puppy, and these guys break in and kill the puppy. And it's like, well, now we're on his side. So, and that's run through 3 films now. He's still hunting down the...
I hope at the end of the last John Wick, there's Ghost Puppy comes down and gives him a thumbs up.
A high five, a pull 5.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
I'm happy, John. I'm happy in heaven. Dog heaven. Burt Reynolds.
Wait, Burt Reynolds is in dog heaven in your world?
Did he make All Dogs Go to Heaven?
Right, sorry. No, I want to get into Simon's theology for a minute here.
Yeah, I'm not saying Burt Reynolds is worrying dogs in heaven. But yeah, no, it's I enjoyed this. It was fun. I love Gazelle, played by Sophia, is it Botella? Who I think went on and did a Star Trek, and she was in Atomic Blonde. I think she may be a model, but
she was supposed to be a little bit of something at one point. She's going to be the next thing. I think I say that about every third movie we cover, but someone's always gets a lot of coverage, as a movie's coming out of and she's going to be in this next year, and they kind of hype them up, and then you never see the person again.
Well, she was almost a little bit like Salma Hayek kind of type when she started off, and then she was in this and a few other films, and now seems to have disappeared again. Yeah, so
I'm sure she's on some TNT original show I've never seen or something right now, but
yeah. But that was a fun little kind of throwback to Roger Moore type Bonds with her legs. And I like Ferraz as well. So Jack Davenport was the first Kingsman. I think the first Lancelot at the start, who tried to rescue Mark Hamill. He's a pretty famous English star. I mean, I wouldn't say major cameo, but it's funny because I remember going with my British group to see this, And some of the ladies a little bit older than me were like, Jack Davenport's in it. Oh, we love Jack Davenport. And of course, he gets killed after 2 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that Jack Davenport, because that wasn't very much, was it? That was like, I hope you made the most of that 30 seconds. But that was kind of fun as well.
Well, you know, I talked about how they didn't have much in the way of like heightened reality, you know, kind of in the first 2/3 of the movie or whatever. But that scene, Seth does it, and then they kind of drop it after that, because that scene is crazy.
Yeah.
That he's in.
Yeah.
And weirdly bloodless.
Yeah, especially as this is an R. I'm surprised they didn't have more blood flying around, but maybe it was CGI blood and they thought it didn't look good. I don't know.
Yeah, because it was all CGI blood in this movie, and it didn't all look particularly great. It was like artifacting on the screen. As it was, which it was kind of a look for a little bit in movies for a while.
Yeah, I think sadly even George A. Romero in his last few zombie films went totally CGI blood, and it doesn't look as good. Yeah, it looked crappy.
But yeah, I mean, it did like that little opening, and the Mark Hamill casting. I mean.
This is before Star Wars, because he's still fat. So I think he snuck this in before he had to start training for Last Jedi.
Yeah. And it makes you go, man, Mark Hamill just sitting around on his Star Wars money.
That great picture where they're all saying Arthur's like, well, what do you know about this guy? Yeah. They pull up this picture and Mark Hamill's just like gurning away. Like he's got the stupidest look in his face. And I'm like, that's actually pretty funny. You know?
Yeah, it was very good use of latter career Mark Hamill.
Although he gets taken out pretty fast. I mean, he doesn't have much to do.
Yeah, I kind of wish they left him with his American accent for it, but it was fine. He's a great voice actor, and he pulled it off. But he just does such a good, like, kind of, I don't know what's going on sort of thing when they put him into certain things, and with his American accent. But it's fun, and I think the cast is all pretty good. I wish there'd been a little bit more, as this movie is definitely about satisfying certain
demographics.
Well, that too, but also satisfying kind of certain narrative beats, and it feels like there should have been more. I guess Charlie's head explodes probably while he's unconscious. The rival.
No, actually, he's back in the sequel.
Oh, good.
For revenge.
I'm actually glad to hear that.
Yeah, we should probably watch the sequel, because it'd be interesting. Because there's I mean, if you've seen this.
Yeah. Except he looks distractingly like Alan Partridge.
Well, he's got the blue blazer as well, isn't he? That's why.
I kept going, he looks like someone. Don't bring that up in the middle of the movie.
That's all English guys look a bit Alan Partridge. Let's be honest. I think I had not an American person, but I had an English girl actually laugh at me for that, because she asked me to go to a bonfire party. This is years ago. I worked with her in this at a university. And she said, do you want to come to the party? And I said, yeah. And she went, do you want to come and help us do the shopping first? For, buy the food? And I went, no, not really. And she went, you just went so Alan Partridge there. And I'm like, so I think English guys just do it without realising it, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, definitely give it a shot. It's a fun, summer movie. That's why I'm not that surprised they're releasing it in the summer for the new one.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's more of a June movie than a September movie. But maybe they're trying to let people finish what they already know what the wave of summer movies is, and saw that slot and said there's nothing that's a good summer type movie for that September box.
Well, I could be wrong. I think the first one came out Valentine's, February, and the second one either came out February or September. And I think what they're doing is they're realising that, especially with the first one, that's a good period where there's not much competition, and you could have a few weeks where you can make a bit of money without going up against something. Because in the summer it might get lost a bit.
I think it would, yeah.
Yeah, and this was back in 2014, before people started really jumping on that. We could release stuff in as early as April for summer, and or maybe even January if we want to do something crazy. People might go out and see something because there's nothing else around. But yeah, so this year we're getting the Kingsman, which is the origins, set in the First World War, which they kind of mentioned in this, of the formation of this, and it looks good.
It'll make a good double bill with 1917.
It would. Yeah. Well, it's got Rasputin's the baddie in it, apparently, using magic by the looks of it. Rhys Evans is Rasputin. Ray Fiennes seems to be basically playing M again, really.
Okay.
But a bit more action-packed, maybe. And there's from the trailer, there's biplane fights and stuff. So it looks fun. It looks fun. I think it's going to be good. The mansion's in it, in the trailer, because they're training outside the same mansion.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
If nothing else, watch this movie for the set design.
Do you think it was a bit X-Men as well when the plane came up outside their mansion?
I was actually more thinking Wayne Manor.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's all a continuum of how does your secret jet you've shown on your sprawling whatever estate.
Yeah.
How do you get out of there? You always have to have vertical takeoff and landing. You got to have the hidden door where you hide the thing.
Well, there's a bit of Captain America in there as well. I think with exit training as well. It's like using your brain instead of your brawn and stuff.
Yeah. I was gonna thought you were gonna say because he steals a car.
Does donuts. Captain America's famous for. But,
if you watch every Captain America thing, he always ends up stealing a car. I don't know why.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I think you're joking.
This goes back to the 1990 movie, the Albert Pune, whatever his name is, the terrible 1990 movie.
Yeah.
He steals like 3 cars in that movie, and it's kind of like ever since Jamie and I are always kind of watching to see is he steal a movie or steal a car in this movie?
Car thief, Captain America.
Yeah.
So he's not perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it, really. Yeah.
So anyway, give it a shot, or if you've seen it before, we'd love to hear from you. Probably the best way to drop us a line is because Simon's not on social media, so he'll never know.
I'll never care or know.
But if you go to the blog, which is at signal-watch.com, and you go to the comment section, and it's easy enough. Just go up into there's a little search bar and just type in Kingsman into the search bar. If it's not the post that you're looking at this very moment, then it should come up, and then leave comments there, and Simon, I'll share and let him know that there's been comments and whatnot. So,
yeah, definitely.
No, very few comments on Kingdom of the Spiders, but people seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah, I think that's like a selective audience, I think.
Good job.
Stop slapping William Shatner on the head. That's his toupee. That's not tarantula. So, yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.
That about wraps it up for this edition of the Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. You can drop comments on this podcast and let us know what you think. We do have a Signal Watch Patreon, and if you're so moved, we'd most certainly appreciate your support. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies. You've got to be kind.